The great thing about my dad was it didn't matter if you're the number one guy or the 13th guy, you were his guy. And I think that's another thing you have to be careful about. Everybody wants to be wanted. They want to feel appreciated. And you have to treat all of your players the same with this level of respect. And when I was playing in Indiana, I was like the ninth guy. I come in, coach would work me out, one of the assistants worked me out. They weren't like, oh, shoot, it's Pat. There's a lot of people that don't do that. They're select five guys, but it's a whole team deal, and everybody's got to feel included.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at Marian University, Pat Knight. Coach Knight spent 10 years as a scout for the Indiana Pacers. He played college basketball at Indiana University for his father, legendary coach Bob Knight. Coach Knight spent time as an assistant coach at Indiana, Akron, and 7 years at Texas Tech. He took over as the head coach at Texas Tech in 2008. Coach Knight became the head coach at Lamar University in 2011. He led Lamar to its first 20-win season since 1988 and a third-place finish in the conference. Lamar would go on to win the Southland Conference Tournament and earn their first NCAA appearance since 2000. Coach Knight was hired as the next Marian men's basketball head coach in May of 2024. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Bology app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Bology offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to bology.com for more info.
What's up, Coach?
Nothing. What's going on?
It's just been 22 years or so. Not a big deal.
Yeah, no, we had better hair both of us back then.
No doubt. No doubt. I was still trying.
Mine's back here, so I got them perfect for the Zoom.
It looks great, and I've given up the in sync look like I was going for back in the day. That was the meanest thing that somebody ever said to me in a crowd was, I didn't know in sync was in town. I was like, all right, I'll take that.
At least you're too young to have. I had a mullet in high school, man.
Coach, are there any pictures of those running around that people could find?
No, my mom has them, though.
There you go. Hard copy.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, well, Coach, this is just such an honor for me to get to connect with you and talk a little bit of hoops. Just really appreciate your time.
No, it's great, man. It's great to see you again. And yeah, anything I can do, I just enjoy talking about basketball. So this is great for me.
Well, Coach, like I said, just so thankful to have this time with you. You and your dad were super kind to me during that time where Baylor versus Texas Tech, and we had some good battles. My last year at Baylor, we didn't have a lot of players available to play, but you guys both had very kind things to say to me and maybe to other teammates of mine. I don't know, but it made me think of always being careful of what I say to opposing players and to really value that time, because you never know when you might say something encouraging that they needed to hear. And so I just, again, thank you for those moments.
Oh, yeah. But, that's really my dad. That's one of the things he always did. I remember as a kid all the way to when I played with him, for him, and then, coaching with them, if he respects somebody on the other team from a playing standpoint and a person standpoint, he always let them know. There's some coaches that won't do that just because you're on the opposing team. And so it always got a kick that how he treated the other players. And then what people don't know, I've been talking to the people here at Marian. At one time, he calculated he helped somebody from every team in the Big Ten get a player. Wow. And so it wasn't just his players that he helped get jobs, it was opposing players. And so that's what I always learned from him. It's not just about your group of kids. It's about everyone you play against. Now, there's some guys you play against you don't like, but you don't say anything to them. But my
So glad
dad,
that you're graduating. That's a good
yeah,
thing.
but the ones my dad respected on other teams, he always would talk to them, especially when he knew it was the last game,
Yeah.
that he'd be competing against them. And I always thought it was neat. One of the neatest ones when I went, was in Indiana, and Mateen Cleaves, the great point guard at Michigan State. And we actually beat him at home. But coach, during the game, put his arm around Mateen Cleaves, just talks to him about competing against them. And the look on the kid's face, I mean, it was unbelievable. You could tell he appreciated it. Well, after the game, we actually won. We're in the coach's locker room, and there's a knock at the door. Open up. It's Mateen with his parents.
No
We
way.
just beat him, but he wanted his parents to come in and meet Coach Bob Knight. And so we got Mateen Cleaves and his parents in the coach's locker room. And, my dad had a great relationship with Coach Izzo to begin with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was kind of neat. You don't get that many places. But my dad always did that. And just so the reason he talked to you is because not only did he respect you as a player, but just how you were as a person. So
That's pretty cool. And it's funny. My dad has a picture that he caught because it just happened to where we were at your place, and I saw him kind of walking, off the court to midcourt, and I never had that. Coach Bliss had actually told me so many things about him. And I do want this talk to be about you. So this is my one story, and so I just see him. It's my last game. I'm like, screw it, I'm going. And so I took off from the line and walked to half court, or from the end of the line, walked to half court, and I just said a couple things, and he put his arm around me, and you and your dad were big guys, and he put his arm around me, and so we're done talking, and my dad captured that story. You had just beat us, but I had this huge smile on my face. And again, going back to, and you kind of nailed it, we get focused on our players, on what just happened to the game, but to be intentional, to zoom out and try to who else can I help? What other kind words can I say? Who do I appreciate in the gym? And I think we get so focused on our feelings and maybe how mad we are at our guys that we don't do that.
yeah, no, and I learned that from my dad, and it's hard to do, but just and I've seen him just how he can get, and still in that moment, if there's a kid he respected, it could be another coach after a game that he lost, and then another thing no one really knows is wild growing up, the phone would ring, back then you didn't have cell phones, you just had the house phone. I'd answer it, it'd be Bill Frieder, it'd be all these coaches that he just played, and I'm kind of figuring out what's going on here. They're helping each other, actually, like, hey, and I'd hear my dad, what did we do against you that hurt you? What did we do that you were prepared for? And back in the day, guys used to help each other, and
Yeah.
it's just changed so much. It's almost like everybody thinks somebody's trying to backstab, and pretty much nowadays that's pretty much how it is. But back then it wasn't that way. Guys actually helped each other and would call each other after they played each other and just talked about, hey, I thought you did this well, you could do this better. And so I wish, kind of is that way nowadays, but it just isn't.
I think it is more rare, but there are a few of those guys that you coach against that you just feel an appreciation for. And that is one of my favorite things about this profession are the relationships when either you go to a clinic or coach. It's really a motivation for getting to do this. I'm at a small private school in Texas where the private school world is even less, there's less camaraderie than even in the public school world. And so this is a chance for me to get to have conversations with guys that I respect or even, my friends. But I do think for younger coaches coming up, the ability to my high school coach was Tommy Thomas, Coach Darren Williams and Bracy Wright at the Colony, Texas. And you can't talk to a guy around Texas that doesn't have a Tommy Thomas story. It is about relationships, and we got to remember to keep building those.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's totally about relationships. And like you said, you never know down the road, and I always got tired. And when I started recruiting, it was kind of funny. And I saw, you get a great relationship with a high school coach, junior college coach. And I would tell them straight up, I'd be like, look, I don't care if I get your player or not. I like you. We'll still be friends. But it was amazing how many guys, they'd be buddies with a guy and you don't get that kid. They never talk to that guy again. And I just never understood that when I got in the business. And I tried to learn. And plus, you never know. They could have a player 10 years from now. But if I liked the guy, I'd actually tell them, hey, don't. And they'd always thank me for it because they were so used to that. Hey, if I don't get the guy, if you don't get the kid, you're probably not going to talk to me again. But I just never got into that. If I liked the guy and, because you know how it is recruiting, you hang out with guys, you go out with them. And I always took the high road per se. And because we didn't get a lot of those guys, we're at Texas Tech, or when I was at Indiana with my dad, we didn't cheat. And so we lost out a lot of guys. But if I like the guys, I always stay in contact because it's about, like you said, relationships. And if you share certain values with them or basketball interests, there's no reason just because you didn't get the guy to have those relationships. But like you're saying, it's so hard. And it'll be interesting for me in a new league, NAI, small situation. We just had our coaches meetings and it went well, but I just don't know yet, how these guys, they're younger, came up a different way than we did. How's it going to be? Is it going to be the camaraderie or is it going to be like it is today? So it's going to be kind of interesting when this all starts playing out this year.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because in getting ready for our talk, I looked at a little bit of kind of what you've been up to since you and I were around each other and obviously knew about your time at Tech, but didn't realize your involvement with the NBA. And so what was that like? And then what's that change to where you're at now?
Well, after Tech, I went to Lamar. And then when I got fired at Lamar, the Pacers called me the next day and I get hired by Larry Bird. I mean, Indiana kid.
So if Larry Bird calls and offers you a job, you don't say no, right?
No. And the funny thing was, it was my old roommate, one of my best friends, as manager at IU when I was there, was player personnel director of the Pacers. He calls me when I get fired. It's a sympathy call. You all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm great. I get paid for 2 more years, and that's what people don't understand. Never feel sorry for a coach because if they have a good agent, and my agent was Brett Just, who's like one of the best agents ever in college basketball. I had 2 years left to get paid for nothing, so it wasn't like. And I was like, man, I'm fine. Well, I just want to check. I was like, I'm good. So he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of burnt out on coaching, and I'd like to get in to the personnel part. And so he was great, and he was like, hey, we do our hiring in July after the draft, and if I could, he was like, Pat, if I had the power, I'd hire you right now. But Larry Bird's our president; he does all the hiring, and so I'll put a good word in for you, and I'll talk to other teams. So he hangs up, calls me back 2 minutes later, and I'm like, man, I told you I'm okay. He's like, no, you aren't gonna believe this. Larry Bird just called me and said he wants to hire, and it was like, I was like now? He's like, yeah. And so I couldn't turn that down. And then, so long story short, I spent the last 10 years working for the Pacers, and I was there. I did college scouting my first 3 years. I was in charge of the West Coast, Texas, all the way over to California. And then I did the pro scouting for 3 years, which is I had the whole Western Conference involved in all the trades, free agent signings. And then I did that for 4. Then the last 3, I went back to college, the whole West Coast deal. And I was actually fine. That was going to be my deal. Just stay in the NBA, love the personnel. But I was always not happy. Like all coaches, you're not happy with how things ended. And the competitive part about me the last couple of years kind of got the juices started going. But I didn't want to go back to being an assistant. And I wanted to go to a small school. And I wanted to get back to Indiana. And then with my dad and his illness with Alzheimer's and really watching him fade away, then, die, it kind of anyone that's been through that, it kind of, you don't have that much time, in life, and you better take advantage of it. So that really set me on the path to get back in it. There's some things I want to prove. I never really been able to build a program, and I just want to make a difference in kids' lives. And I wanted to go, but it had to be a special situation where they're not guns for hire. They're actually student athletes. And it just happened to be Marian opened up. And actually, no one really knows this, but Steve Downing, my AD, was my dad's first All-American in 1973. So how many of us actually get to work for an athletic director we like? I jumped on it, and I don't know how many guys, to be honest, would leave a 2-year guaranteed contract with an NBA team on the table and take a major salary cut. But for me, it had nothing to do with the money. It's just a personal thing. It gave me one more chance to prove myself and to honor my dad and everything he taught us, when myself and all of us played for him.
Man, I love that, Coach. And that's makes a lot of sense because you're right. On paper, when you see works with NBA and then to go to, and not to be little, I love the D3 level. I love the NAI level. Like, I think there's really good coaches there, and there's great basketball too. And then my follow-up was going to be, what was it about a smaller school that interested you? All the Indiana connections, the AD, that makes sense. But then you said something about the kids and the fact that most of them, they want to be at that school. There's not the scholarship and the money thing that's out there. Or at NAI, you do have some.
Yeah, we're fully funded. So we have scholarships.
But it is kind of, is it a high academic?
Very high.
Yeah. So I mean, those are usually like you get that circle's pretty small and you get pretty great kids.
Oh, these kids are going to be governors, senators, presidents, doctors, businessmen, way above anything that I was able to do. But the funny thing is now with the transfer portal, we're starting to get players that get overlooked.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of becoming like the developmental league because a couple of the better players in this league last year moved up to Division I. And so now you're kind of getting a mix of kids that were borderline that come play for you, and we'll probably have a chance. We'll get in the transfer portal, but I'm open to it. I mean, you have to adapt. And my administration knows. I told them we're going to have the good mix of the good student athletes, but the good thing is even the better basketball players I get, they still have to be student athletes because actually at my school, if you're below a 2.75, you have to go in front of a committee, and the chances are you're probably not going to get in. And they were great. You can always, I don't say get a mulligan, but you can take that at-risk kid here and there. But for me, I just have no interest in that. I'm going to go after the academics because that's what this school is about, is the academics. And I want to prove that you can actually win and have good academics the way it used to be. And, and these kids, if some of them have a chance, I told them I'll help them go Division I if they want to get paid, but it's not going to be here. You just can't afford the hundreds of thousands of dollars at this level that these kids are getting paid at the Division I level. And so that's what appealed to me. I'm still coaching student athletes, not guns for hire. But I will have some, though, that are going to be good enough that they will have a chance to go on, and which I think is great for our program. But even those kids still have to get in school here and have to go to class. And so that's the thing that appealed to me because that was everything when I went and played for my dad, and then working for him. Even though we were at the highest level, still had to go to class, still had to be a student, still had to get your grades. And so it's all the same concepts, but now you kind of got to find that now at a smaller situation because a lot of the big schools now, the academics and all that stuff's out the window. It's all really just, how much money you have in your NIL and how many guys can you buy.
I still think there is some purity to college basketball, and I think it is at levels like yours. And there's a lot of great D3 colleges around where I am in DFW and some good NAIs too. But something I thought about, your experience with the NBA and all of the movement there, do you think that makes you even more okay with the portal and how that environment is? Because I feel like some are very reluctant to do it, want to stick with just the high school kids, or not very comfortable, or like you said, you better adjust. But you seem to have a little bit of level of comfort with it.
Yeah, and the NBA, every year the team's different. I mean, you just don't know. Just because guys age, is one of the main factors. Injuries. We were in a small market, and it was really hard for us to sign free agents or to get the guy to stay for a second contract. And because everybody wants to go to the big cities because of the commercials, the money on the side, and so you got to be pretty adaptive in that sense. And what I learned in the NBA, that's why you have the G League. You know, bring along the younger guys to fill the spots that you lose, especially in a small market. And we've been fortunate enough. Halliburton is one of those rare breed of kids that he's just about basketball and the situation, and he's embraced Indianapolis. Indianapolis has embraced him, and so he doesn't have that ego where some players we've lost in the past when I was with the Pacers, and now we're in a. I mean, had a great season last year, and we're building. Especially a great coach like Coach Carlisle and the administration we have with our president, GM, assistant GMs is just phenomenal. But we are behind the 8 ball a little bit just because we're a small market. So I just learned that you cannot. It's not like the Lakers. We can just go out and buy your team. We have to be really good in the draft, and then we have to make smart decisions in free agency or trades. And so it kind of made me realize that, you got to be able to go with the flow and develop guys. And that's what I told my assistant, Todd Howard, that we've got to become experts at developing players. And at this NAIA level, every once in a while we'll get lucky and get that player that could possibly go to Division I eventually, but most of our kids are good players that can play at this level. We got to develop. And we're going to have freshmen again. Maybe every once in a while we could get a D1 transfer to come in, but most of it's going to be like it was when I grew up playing. Freshmen, we actually redshirt kids down here, and it's about developing. You're going to have kids now at this level for 3 or 4 years. So that's what appealed to me being down at this level. But it got me thinking again, and when I was in the NBA, about the development and just being able to change the roster in a flip of a dime. That was the one thing. You have the trade deadline in February. I mean, your team can change. In a heartbeat in the NBA. And the second half of the season, you could have a totally different team. Either one that's really good, or one if teams tank, it gets really bad. And so the NBA was a great experience for me because I'd never been around it. Had to really change my focus on players. My first scouting, first 4 games that I went to, I was doing scouting reports on 6'4" power forwards, because in the motion offense, you can have 6'4" power forwards. So I they always had us go to an NBA game once a month to see the size. So I'll never forget, I go see the Clippers play the Mavericks, and they're like, you don't have to stay for the game. Get there for warm-ups, stand by the basket, see the size and athletics. Athletics is, wow. I called my director of personnel. I redid every report that I'd done for the first 4 games I went to, because I didn't realize the size, athleticism. Because you can get away in college playing small lineups, and everyone talks about the small lineups in the NBA. Well, those guys are still 6'8", 6'9". They're still massive. I don't care what they say. So that was kind of a learning experience for me, my first month on the job. But I loved it. It opened my eyes to just a different way to play, how to handle, rosters and everything. And I think all that will help us, down at this level.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. Coach, this just popped in my head, and because you mentioned playing 6'4" power forwards, Andre Emmett's name just came up, and I've never been able to ask you or anybody about. Actually, that's not true. I did record a talk with Ronald Ross, and we talked about Andre a little bit, and so, but I would love to ask you, what was the shift? What was the change that he made that you guys were able to make with him? Because me and Andre were the same year. In our freshman year, I actually played a little bit more than he did, under Coach Dickey, and then you guys came in, and it was a change where all of a sudden this dude's one of the best players in America. And I knew him in high school. How did that happen?
Well, they ran all these sets, and so they had him trying to make him a perimeter player. And Andre, God rest his soul,
Yeah.
great kid. He just couldn't shoot.
No.
He couldn't shoot outside of 10 feet.
15 feet and in, pretty darn good.
The beauty of the motion offense,
Yeah.
it kept him around his comfort level in 10 feet, 15 feet on in. And he just, right away. I remember our first practice, we got him the motion offense, and he's setting down screens and popping back, and he's right there in his comfort zone. He could either shoot a footer there or one dribble, get to the basket. And then we had entries that we put him in, and it just kept him in his strengths. And that was a good thing about the motion offense. We could play him we didn't get into numbers, but if there were numbers, he would have been a 4 and sometimes a 5. But it kept him around the basket, and that was his comfort, and that's why he's able to lead the Big 12 in scoring. But where's it hurt him, though? Going to the next level, because everyone's set, and it'd be a little different nowadays. But it's still, you got to be a certain size. The 3, the 4, the 5, and with his size, he should have been a shooting guard.
Yeah, and his inability to shoot would definitely make spacing difficult, because that seems to me what the NBA is all about, putting those deadly shooters in the right space to create gaps. But anyway.
Exactly. But we just saw, or my dad saw, how good he was around the bucket, and we'd run our offense, and it kept him. And, and my dad was great. Like, Andre, you're not a three-point shooter. If you prove it, do it. But it's not about shooting the three. It's about scoring. Yep. And, there was nobody better. I'm thinking, even to the IU guys growing up, just around that bucket, because, he phenomenal leaper and so quick with the ball, and he could spin and just everything around the bucket. And then he was an unbelievable rebounder because he's such a good athlete, and it kept him around the bucket instead of out there on the perimeter like he was his freshman year. And so really, my dad was the best thing to happen to him from a standpoint, because any other coach has him, they're still going to try and make him that 2 guard.
Yep.
Instead of, hey, you're just a player. Play to your strengths, score around the bucket.
Yeah, you're right on the money with that. What about Andre fitting in with you and Coach? Because coming from, Indiana maybe type players, you talked about the high academic, the high guys, that with discipline. I knew Andre back in the day. But he did seem to love it, and you guys just worked together so well. It just always was such an interesting dynamic to me that even in the same conference, I didn't get it.
So it was just one instant. So we had Midnight Madness with the ladies, and I warned the players, like, guys, this is not Midnight Madness. This is going to be practice. We're going to do, there's going to be breakdowns. So there's no dunk contest, no 3-point contest. We're practicing because we split the floor. We're at one end, the ladies were at the other end. Well, of course, they were doing a regular Midnight Madness. No, we're out there. We're doing 4 corners. We're doing zigzag. Well, Bob Byer, one of our assistants, who's now at the Lakers, we're out there, and I warned him. I was like, I kept warning him. So we go out, and Coach wouldn't come out for about 5 or 10 minutes. And when he comes out, Andre's just jacking around like it's Midnight Madness. Coach gets in his ass, man. It was one of the all times. Andre freaks out, runs back to the locker room crying. So Bob Byer goes, gets him, and they're not back for it's like 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, Andre comes running out. And I'm like, Bob, what? He was like, Pat, I just sat him down. I was like, look, you were warned. This is how it is with Coach. There's no BS. We're practicing tonight. It's this way all the time. And I don't know. It clicked right then. After that, never a problem.
Wow.
Never. It was wild. It just took that one instance, that one ass chewing, as they say, and he bought in. Never, honest God, we never had. Now, he won the greatest defensive player. That frustrated us. But we try to overlook that because he was so powerful on the offensive end.
His offense was better than his problems.
And he graduated early,
Oh.
which was no problems with class, great grades. I mean, it's more Andre, I think, trying to portray himself to kind of be, I wouldn't say not a mean guy or whatever, but try to act like a tough guy sometimes, when he was actually one of the greatest human beings you could ever meet. Like, he'd be wearing, his sleeves torn off, and then, like, he didn't have any tattoos his first year. Nothing wrong. I mean, I got tattooed, but back then no one had them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's got 100 of them in 1 year. So it's almost like he had two identities. Like, he's trying to portray, hey, I'm a tough guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about school. I don't care. And I used to tell him, I was like, Andre, come on, man. Why do you like this way? You never miss class. You got good grades. Oh, come on, coach, man. It's my image. He was just a sweetheart. It's unbelievable. And when I tell people that, because if you just saw the outside in, oh, man, he wasn't coach's type of kid. Nah, it took that, honest God, that one time at Midnight Madness, Bob Byer sat down with them. And after that, unbelievable. And then the 1 year, his junior year, he was thinking about going pro. And so his mom and aunt came and sat with us, and, what do you think? And, coach was honest, like, look, I think you'll probably a second round pick just because you play out of position. That's how the NBA. But if you want to go, fine. I'll help you. I'll help you find a good agent. But then they asked, well, if he doesn't make it, can he come back? And, coach is like, if we have the scholarship, but I can't promise you the scholarship's going to be here. That didn't go over really well, but then had the conversation like, look, we have to protect ourselves, but I'll help you either way. But then Andre made a great decision, came back, had another, first team all Big 12, led the Big 12 in scoring. But my dad was right. Just playing power forward as a 6'4", it just didn't translate, but he made a great living overseas. And playing in the Big Three and stuff. But great. I mean, honest God, one of my all-time favorite person. And then what was great, when these guys learn about coach, it's just like, water on a duck. It just flies off. Now, coach used him because no one realized this. Coach really changed from a standpoint. He realized, like, when I played, you could yell at all of us. We all could take an ass to him. But now as you get society changes, kids are getting softer, we'd actually have meetings like, okay, who can we get on, who can we not? And so we'd actually kind of go overboard on the ones we could, like, say, like, we knew we couldn't get on you. So coach, all right, we're not getting on Matt tonight, but we're going to get on Pat. And we'd actually warn guys, like, hey, look, it's not going to be you, but if, Matt screws up, we're going to yell at you instead. Andre became one of those guys. We would yell at him because we knew we couldn't yell at so-and-so. And Andre loved it after that. But it was wild. I've never seen it change. It usually takes a year or so. And I was like, oh, boy, when he ran in the locker room, he was balling. Didn't know what to do.
Not a good sign.
Runs off the court. And after that, the kid bought in. And so he's was one of my, my dad's favorites. Probably just the whole situation, like, don't know if it's going to work. We watch the tape. The kid can't shoot. They're playing him at 2 guard. And all of a sudden, we got him in our motion offense. We keep him around the bucket. We're like, oh, my God, this is the most explosive scorer we've had around the bucket. So he's one of those great stories. And it's just a tragedy what happened to him. His life got taken from him. Because, he would have been he's always one of those kids hear from periodically and everything, would check in. And it's a loss for all of us. But honestly, looking on the outside end, people are like, how'd that work? But it did, man. And they end up being one of the – when I tell people, no way, he was one of the guys coach – I'm like, yeah. I was like, the guy ended up loving being chewed out after that first time. So whatever happened, it clicked, and not the poor kid, but the kid bought in.
Yeah. Coach, thank you for telling those details, because
it's something. I kind of get on a rant.
No, it's something for 22 years I've been wondering about, and because, again, knew him in high school, and you're right, like, he was so likable, charismatic, and so we were good, but then I just knew he wasn't doing well his freshman year, and then the switch, but then also like who it was with. From the outside, I always believed this about you and your dad, is that outsiders didn't know. Like, we really didn't know what it was like to be on the team, coached by you, the day to day. You hear about that like the butt chewings and stuff, but that kind of happens everywhere. But what you don't hear, like even the way that Ronald Ross talked about his experience, he loved it, and it was life changing. And but again, I love getting to hear that about how it worked with him. I love the story of Midnight Madness, but yeah.
And for me was, while working for my dad, it's like Wizard of Oz. I got to go behind the curtains. A lot of his madness is planned. And it was wild because we did the good cop, bad cop. He had a rule. You could go off on a team 3 times. And by going off, throw the water cooler, kick them out of practice. But 3 times was it, because you lose your effect. Mm-hmm. And we had one bad year, his one losing season. And we used all 3 in the pre-conference. We were below 500, and now we're going to start the conference. So he has a meeting with us. He's like, all right, guys, we're done. We're, like, what do you mean, coach? He's like, we can't get on them anymore. He's like, you can go off 3 times, and then you lose interest. And he's like, so now we just got to coach them up. He's like, we're about to start the Big 12. It's not going to be pretty. But if we coach these guys up, we go out, find a really good junior college guard, I guarantee we'll be in the tournament next year. So he was like, now we got to police ourselves, because the great thing, worked for him as assistant, you coached. When it was your scout, you coached. You went through the plays, everything. You're allowed to get on the players, yell at the players. I mean, he got on us for not talking enough at practice. Wow. But so he was like, now, guys, we got to police each other. So if you see me starting to go off, stop me. If I see, so it'd be great. And so I could always tell at halftime, if he started jogging, the players were going to get an ass chewing. There must have been 3 or 4 times during that Big 12 season. I'd run up and grab him. What? Damn, we used up all 3. Oh, shit. All right, let me compose myself. And he would wait outside for me. Then he'd go in, and then same thing with me. I'd start, Pat. Okay. Honest God. We did that, didn't go off. I mean, we got beat. It was a bad year. Got assigned to junior college, good guard. We were in the NCAA tournament the next year. And so then I started thinking, I'm like, when I played, I'm like, yeah, he never overstepped the 3 going off rule. And so I'm calling the teammates, like, hey, you remember that time? I was like, that was planned. I was like, I'm learning all this stuff. And I mean, it was amazing just learning the stuff. And he was like an expert on just motivating and trying to get the most out of the kids. And the best was, and I told this a couple years ago, I did this interview with a buddy of mine's daughter, Jeff Goodman, and because no one had really hears any of these stories. Yeah. And I'm not one of those guys that's going to write a book. I just like doing, hey, they're good stories on podcasts. We're having a beer at a bar. And so we're at Tech, and we got these freshmen, and it's like his second to last year. We're pretty good, but the freshmen are driving them nuts. So he's like, all right, we're in the locker room, and he's like, all right, let's call some managers in. He's like, all right, guys, I need two cakes. I want 1 vanilla cake, 1 chocolate cake, and I want a couple of gallons of vanilla and chocolate ice cream. And he reaches his pocket, gives the managers a bunch of money. They go to the store. They come back, and so now, I mean, we're supposed to have practice. It's Sunday. We're going to have practice, and we just gotten beat a couple games. And so now we go out, and coach is like, hey, go get a couple of the long tables, set the ice cream and cake out there. And so we have no idea what's going on. So he's like, all right, let's go. So we go out there. He's like, all right, you guys, let me get this set up. So coach is behind the two different cakes, the two different ice creams. He's got a knife, and he's got in one hand and an ice cream scoop in the other. He's like, go get the players. I'm like, all right. So we go get the players, bring them out, and they come out, ready for it. They start to get in our four corners passage. All of a sudden they look, no, guys, come over here. Hey, I want to apologize. I've been too hard on you guys. We practice too much. I just want you guys to have a good time. He's like, come on, grab a plate. Get in here. He makes the guys line up. So they grab a plate. He's cutting the cake, putting it on their plate, and he's like, you want vanilla or chocolate? Oh, why don't you have both? He serves the whole team cake and ice cream. Now they're standing there out on the court like they don't know what. Oh, eat up, guys. We're here to have fun. So he's like, all right, boys, let's go. So we go back to the locker room. He starts getting dressed. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, the Cowboys are playing this afternoon. I'm going home. He's like, let's go. And I'm like, really? He's like, let's go. We get dressed. We go home. We just leave the team out there with ice cream and cake. So I tell one of the managers, I'm like, hey, call me and let me know what happens. And so a couple hours go by, manager calls me. He's like, hey, coach. I was like, what happened? He's like, they end up having practice on their own. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So I call my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad. He was like, yeah, they practice on their own. I'm like, what? I was like, yeah, okay. That's what I was hoping. See you tomorrow. We had it all planned. We ended up winning the next game and ended up going to the tournament. I mean, it was just all this play. I mean, it was wild. We had no idea, but it was cool for me that I actually got to go behind the curtain and just see all the motivational techniques and he would really just sit there and we talk about players, their personality. And, Phil Jackson was the mastermind at it, but my dad actually had a lot of Phil Jackson in him but no one wants to believe that because you just see the stuff on ESPN and everything. But a lot of it, no, some of it wasn't, some of it was just pure anger at times, but the majority of it though, it was amazing. I mean, we'd spent a lot of time playing on motivation. I mean, he'd be like, hey, you go in there, you'll be the bad cop. You just go off and then I'll come in and like calm things down. I mean, it was amazing, all the stuff. And it was great when I started seeing my old teammates telling them the stories. They'd be like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, yeah. And he's like, he did that to me, but it always worked. So it's kind of neat just seeing that part of him. And he never got enough credit from a standpoint of, he always got the credit because he's great X's and O's, but he's also great dealing with personalities and just dealing with kids.
I would love to go a little deeper into that because you've given a couple of great examples of one, knowing your players. You talked about how you sit around and talk about, we can get onto this guy, we can't get onto this guy. So knowing your players, but then also knowing your team. Because for me, when I hear the ice cream story with the cake, golly, in my heart, I'm thinking, please practice. But there's a risk in that. Like, what if they don't? Is that really the team that we have? Like, how do I come back from this? So I say, you guys should have practiced, so how do you get to the place where you do know your players that well and you do know your team that well?
You have to spend time with them, and, my dad always had us over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and he always put on the assistants a lot because you got to be careful as a head coach. You can't be buddy, but your assistants can be, but you can't be a stranger either. There's a fine line as a head coach, but you got to be around your kids. I mean, my dad was always in the office, always when guys were working out, he'd work them out himself, or if they're working out with an assistant, he'd come down there, work with them, and he was always talking to the assistants. He'd bring them, have a player come in, and my dad had a great rule, and I stick to it. He never came to your apartment or dorm. That was your place of privacy, because he knew, he was at Ohio State. They had fun, and so you never had to worry about him coming there. And if he wanted to see you, you came to the office or, went to his house. And he did the same to the locker room. He only came in the locker room when it was like, okay, before practice, and game time. He was like, he always said players need to have their space. But he was always around though. He wasn't like he was never in the office. And so he got a good feel for the players, bring them in, talk to them, come down while they're working out. So to me, you just got to be around them. But it's amazing how many guys aren't around them.
Yeah.
And don't get to know and don't talk to their assistants about, what are you hearing? And my dad would tell the team too, and I do it too. Look, there's probably things you don't want the head coach to know. I get it. Tell the assistants, and assistants don't. And my dad told his assistants. I tell mine, you don't have to tell me everything because I don't need it. That's why we have good assistants. But you have to be around them. You got to have them out to the house. I think you have to be around the office. You have to be around the gym when they're in there. You got to be the guy that's rebounding and working them out just to get a feel for them. But it's also a fine line because you got to be able to be the one to discipline them. And like my dad always told guys, hey, there's going to be times you don't like me, but when you graduate, I'll be the best friend you ever have. But while you're here, I have to be an extension of your parents. I got to be the one to tell you things you don't like and get you to go to class, get you to graduate, and, get you to become, and it wasn't just becoming the best player, you'd be the best man you can be. But again, you just got to be around them. And that's what we try. I've already had my team. We go to rugby. We went to a rugby game together. We worked a women's soccer game the other night. We're going to a football game. And that's how we were as a team. Coach would be like, hey, so, the girls are playing tonight. You got to go. Hey, football. You just got to, everything's got to be done as a team. And you don't have to all like each other. It's about disrespecting each other enough. When it becomes game time, you guys are there for each other. But it just doesn't happen when it's separate. And that's one bad thing about the NBA. You really don't have that. And that's what's so great about college. You can set up events, have the players over, have things for them to do, be around them in the office. Hey, you got an hour in between class. Hey, why don't you come see us? Let's talk. Watch film with. My dad loved watching film with players. And he bring them one-on-one. And it's just stuff like that is really a bonding situation. But you have to be around them. I mean, that's the whole thing. And that's what they asked me about this job when I was interviewed. Are you going to be around? Are you just going to use it? I was like, well, where else am I going to be? I mean, it's how you got to be in the office arena. That's where you learn about your team, and be around and work them out. I don't have we'd have managers rebound and stuff, but my dad always liked there had to be a coach there, and that's it. And it's pretty simple, really, if you think about it. But it's amazing how many people don't want to do it. And I get it because you get caught up, especially being the head coach. We got to speak, we got to go raise money. And sometimes it can kind of, oh, shoot, I got to meet with so-and-so. Oh, he's in the gym. Let me go. But you got to do it. And plus, these kids want to see you, And plus, if they don't, it also keeps them on edge and makes them work harder, But the bottom line is you just got to be around them all over the place. But like my dad, I stay away from the dorms, apartments, in the locker room.
Yeah. And I really love the balance that you talked about there because I do think, coaches can take either extreme too far. I rarely saw Coach Bliss. I think it was just practice. That was the only time we saw, and there was this level of almost like, there he is, like a respect or fear at times factor, but never a closeness. So very transactional in a lot of ways with that relationship. And I was close to him. I was probably closer to him than most of the guys were. And so I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it was the feeling. But then you could go the other route, which is you're their buddy and there is no boundary. And then the level, like what sticks out with me about the Andre story and that night was how extreme the butt chewing was. And it was at a level that it only had to happen one time. But like, if you're worried about being their best friend, then you can't hold that level of, or if they like you, you can't hold that level of discipline. So transactional versus transformational. Transformational to me sounds like you're around them for the important parts and you're active in their life and you are approachable, but there's a balance to it.
Yeah, even like when I have them over, I'm not down there playing pool with them and stuff. That's their time. But I'm there. It's my house, and I'll go down. And that's how Coach was. You got it. You got to have that deal. But then what was great seeing my dad when those guys were done playing for him to come visit. Oh my God! I mean, he's taking them fishing. They go home. I mean, he's just. I mean, like just one of the guys now. But you just can't. You can't do that. I hear stories of guys going to the dorm room. Hang out with the guys. you got to have your space. And like you said, you got to have that level of like, oh shoot, it's coach, you
Yeah.
know. And I tell my kids when I recruit them, my dad did the same thing. You know, there are gonna be times you don't like me, uh, but I'm here for you. You come to me anytime, but I got to be the one to do the discipline. But when you're done, that's when we become friends. You know, and that's another thing guys don't do. Once you get done with most guys playing for them, you'll never hear from them again. You know, they're
Yeah.
done with it. And schools are the same way. I mean, it's amazing. Like some schools you check, hey, no, they only hit me up for money. You know, it's just amazing and that was so great. Well, my dad built at Indiana, and then he started doing it at Tech. You know, because he heard, you know, guys hadn't been heard from the school in 10 years or whatever, except for like money. You know, because Mike Leach was actually the one that warned us about it because he was there the year before and was like, hey, they haven't done a good job keeping track of the alumni.
Wow.
And Mike started sending, like, got the whole list of, you know, the old football rosters. He was sending them Texas Tech gear, and they were like, they never got that before. And so, but my dad had always done that in Indiana, and that's why, you know, alumni night, I mean, every practice game, players were coming back. That's what we want to do here. We've already reached out to all the old Marian players.
Nice.
You know, come back. You know, our practices are open. You got to get that going. But a lot of schools don't do that. And a lot of coaches, you know, don't do that. Once you're done playing for them, you're done. The great thing about my dad was it didn't matter if you're the number one guy or the 13th guy. You were his guy. And I think that's another thing you have to be careful about. Everybody wants to be wanted. You know, they want to feel appreciated. And you have to treat all of your players the same with this level of respect and working with them. I mean, I don't care who it was. Come in when I was playing in Indiana, you know, I was like the ninth guy. I come in, coach would work me out, one of the assistants worked me out. They weren't like, oh shoot, it's Pat. No, it didn't matter if you were Calvert Chaney or Pat Knight, they were going to work your ass up. But again, there's a lot of people that don't do that. They're select 5 guys, but it's a whole team deal, and everybody's got to feel included.
You know, Coach Drew did an amazing job with that, and he's done that for the last 20 plus years at Baylor. And my first year there, and he knows this, and I've talked about this before, so it's not like revealing anything, but I was very jaded towards coaches after what had happened there. And so he came in as a 32-year-old, and I was a pleaser, but basically more just showing up and going through the motions. And I was very resistant to what he was selling, which was joy. I mean, he came in smiling, the exact opposite of what I'd had for 3 years, but you kind of get used to that. But here's my thing. I went to Iceland for a year, came back. I didn't go back to a Baylor game for a few years. And part of me thought they don't really want me or anybody from that era, the dark days, around. And that was just in my head. Nobody ever said anything. I went to a game down there, and he saw me after the game. I kind of came down to the edge of the floor. He saw me from across the way, walked straight over and gave me the biggest hug, and made me think that, like, I was one of his guys, even though it was just that 1 year. And he's done a phenomenal job. He has a vets text group that we're all on, and every week or every couple weeks we'll get something from him on there. That I do feel like it's rare, but it's a great reminder for all of us to do.
No, and he's a great example. I mean, no one knows this. I actually got kicked off the IU team for public intoxication, and I was transferring to Valpo to play for Homer and Scott. Scott recruited me because 2 of my buddies were transferred back. So I've known Scott forever, and just the job. I mean, I saw it firsthand when he took over. And he's always been that person, man, high energy. And that's what that situation needed. And he's I mean, he was a good coach then, but his level of coaching now, I mean, it's elite. And I've seen it firsthand. That's one place I went to every year for practice because, I always had the players, but I enjoyed being around him, his energy, and he's legit, man. And it's been fun watching him grow up as not a person. He's always been that person, but just watch his coaching, man. I mean, his practices are by far some of the best I've seen. is X's and O's. And so, but that's him, man. He makes you feel like when I go there, I feel great, man, because you fly down there. I got to drive from Austin to Waco. You're not in the greatest mood, because you're driving, you're by yourself, and
And it's Waco. Yeah.
I believe they're feeling great, man. Just
Yeah.
talk to him and the energy he brings, and but he's a rarity because a lot, like you said, a lot of these places, and he's one of those guys. You just had to play for him for 1 year, and my dad's the same way. I mean, I won't name the name, but
Yeah.
someone was asked, like, how many guys did your dad fail with? Like, couldn't if they were get him over the hump, and there was one guy that had a gambling addiction. And this is like when I was born, this is like those early teams. And I think he only had it for like 1 year, inherited him. And even towards the end, when my dad could still remember the teams with Alzheimer's, he'd bring this guy up. And I'd be like, Dad, he really wasn't your guy. You didn't recruit him. Nah, he's my guy because I coached him. He's like, I got him this job, that job. And I just got that gambling. And it amazed me that this guy, he inherited, but to him, he had him for 1 year, and it still drove him nuts. I mean, honestly, probably a year before he died, he couldn't help this guy, and that's early 70. What are you talking about? 50 years, wow. But you will find guys like that, and you found one, and Scott, and but it's a rarity. It's kind of sad, and now it's really a rarity. I mean, everybody's out for themselves. It's like, and with this NIL stuff, people ask me, like, well, how would your dad have been? I was like, he'd have been against it, but then everyone would have gotten paid. The managers, every player. He'd been hitting up guys like Tony La Russa, Bill Parsons. Hey, send me $100,000. We would have been all taken care of, but he wouldn't have forgot the school. He'd have still raised money for the library, the faculty. But how many of these guys are doing that? No, it's all about their teams. They just need the money for the team. And I bet there's not even a handful of guys that are still helping out the university because they need that money for the players. But I guarantee my dad would never lost sight of the schools. If the science department needed money, he would have raised money for them, even though he needed money for the NIL. And so I tell people, yeah, he'd have been against it. It's like the 3-point shot. He was the last guy to concede, but what's he do? You recruit Steve Alford and you win a national championship. So
it worked out okay.
We would have been well paid, but the school he would still help raise money for the school, not just basketball.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. So you mentioned earlier about being excited about building a program, which is awesome to hear, especially after 30 plus years in coaching and all the different levels you've been a part of. What is it that excites you about getting to build something there?
Just competition, man, winning and losing, just games, there's nothing better than working with a kid. And that's what I miss the most about the NBA, working with a kid on a move or, on his defense, and you see him do it in a game. And then to get 5 guys to do that while they're out on the court and then to beat somebody, everyone can say, oh yeah, but hey, there's still a score being kept. So anyone tells you that they don't enjoy the winning and the competition, they're in the wrong business, and I miss the competition and I miss just working with the guys because scouting was lonely. You're by yourself, you travel. I mean, I go to 3 to 5 games a week. I think we average anywhere from 90 to 115 games a year per person. And you're traveling by yourself. And I missed being part of a team, being with those, 13, 12 players, having to, being with my assistants. But the whole thing is just building it up. That first day of practice where things don't look good, you're putting in your offense, your defense, and then just to see it during the year, it gets a little better by Christmas. Then conference starts. And then by the end of conference, you got things rolling. And hopefully, you get to a tournament. And it's just the whole process is what I missed. And really, it's just being competitive and just
Yeah.
being able to, and then just helping these kids see them become better players. But like I told them, I was like, guys, I got to get you ready for the real world. And, like I had two kids late for weights, and they come in. I'm like, do you guys understand? If this was a job, you're fired.
Yeah.
You're done. And you can't do this. I was like, no, it's great. It's college. You get second, third chances. But I did a Bob Knight on them. And so I was like, all right, boys. I was like, not only did you, and I'm cleaning up my language, you screwed yourselves, but you screwed, you screwed the team. So I'll see all you guys tomorrow at 6 o'clock on the football field. So now they're like, all right, coach, so they leave. So I'm talking to my assistant, our strength coach. I was like, hey, we could just really Jedi mind these guys. I was like, my dad, I was like, I'll show up, I'll have the whistle, stopwatch, and I'll line them up, and I'll be like, all right, guys, this is your one mulligan, go to bed. Because it's going to be bad enough that they had to get up at the crack of dawn. And so that's what I did. I told my assistant, I told the strength, don't even show up, I got him. So I drive out to the football field because my house is about 10 minutes away. They're all there, and I got there. They're all there early, and it was cold there. They got their stocking caps on, and I actually stopped at the donut place. Got like 5 dozen donuts, but I had them in my car. So I get out. I got the whistle. And I'm like, all right, guys, what's that thing Nick has you do? Oh, the Marian mile. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, that'll be our warm up. Then we'll go to the football field. And they're like, all right, coach. And they start to take off. I was like, oh, no, we're going together. I was like, come on, get up here. All right, everybody line up in a row. And when I say blow the whistle, we go. So then I'm like, oh, hey, any of you guys play golf? And they're like, yeah, coach, we do. I was like, all right, this is your only, and I'm cleaning up again, your only mulligan. If you do this stuff again, we will go. And I was like, go to bed. And they're like, what? I was like, go to bed. I was like, oh, by the way, I got some donuts for you. Got the donuts out, handed to them, drove off, and they just, I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't had a problem since. So
that's awesome, though. Love getting to hear about your love for competition, and then and what kind of excites you about there. Love the Jedi mind stuff. As a Star Wars fan myself, anytime I talk about that in front of my team now, I just see glaze. I mean, they only know the new ones, which in my opinion don't really count.
Those are bad. Come on, man. My wife, she's 7 years younger, has never seen a Star Wars.
Coach.
And I was upset because you ever watch Pawn Stars?
Yeah.
So, I lived in Vegas the last 10 years because of scouting. So that toy store that they use to, give whenever they bring toys in and they use those guys, I went there. It's right there down on Fremont. So they got all the Star Wars toys. I had every figure, the Millennium Falcon. I had the TIE Fighter. I had everything. I asked the guy, I tell him my whole lot. I even had Smurfs. They're selling the Smurfs. I was like, well, how much is Smurfs? Oh, shoot, you can get anywhere from 25 to 100 bucks. I had like 100 of those. So the guy tells me, I call my mom up. Hey, Mom, what'd you do with my toys? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. When your brother came, we went through my storage units. They weren't climate control. Everything was melded together.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. I told my wife, I said, you don't believe that was worth thousands. My toys were worth thousands. All my Star Wars.
That was our retirement, honey, right there.
Yeah. But so, yeah, they don't appreciate the good Star Wars. Those first 3, the last 3, no.
Yeah. The offense that you ran, we talked about with Andre. One thing I do remember is how it was focused, and maybe it was more because of him, but it was focused on scoring around the basket and having really efficient opportunities. I don't remember a lot of 3-point shots happening. Is your idea of offense changed a bunch from then? And then with these guys, like, what type of identity do you want them to have? And if you don't feel comfortable sharing it because opponents may watch or whatever, they're
going to see it to begin.
There you go.
We have a lot of good shooters. I mean, I think in the NBA, shooting is a priority, and it's a skill. And that's why guys get paid a lot of money just to sit in the corner because it spaces the offense. So with the motion offense now with shooters, you just spread it out. Like I had really good shooter, Mike James at Lamar, when my first year we got to the NCAA tournament. So now instead of everything like down screens and back screens, a lot of flare screens now.
Okay.
and ball screen actions. And so you just spread it out more. And it's perfect because you got guy now you had the handoff as part of the actions down the motion off. And so now, yeah, we're really 3-point oriented, push the ball up. And my dad got to that later on when we had like Jay Jackson. We added, so I got him a ball screen. He would never set a ball screen. And he was a master defending the ball screen. So it's like our Jay Jackson, who was all Big 12 for us, was playing. I think Ronald had graduated. And so Jay, we're playing Missouri, and it was one of Quinn Snyder's teams. They had like the best starting five. They're ranked top 10 in the country, playing us at home. They jump on us. I mean, it's like 10, 12, 0. Coach calls timeout. So we're meeting out there. He's like, man, what are we doing? I'm like, all right, Dad, I'm not going to like this. But the way they defend, it was my scout, the way to defend the ball screen, but you don't set it. But if you set a ball screen, both guys are going to go because they're going to be worried about Jay. And we had a kid named Thomas that was a really good, we got him from junior college, outside shooter, was about 6'8". I was like, you let Robert pick it, set the ball screen and pop out for the three. And then when he hits a couple, they won't double Jay. They're going to guard him both separately. Jay can get by anybody who's guarding them straight up. And coach is like, he's looking around, he's like, all right. And as we start walking, I'll say, test start. He jams that clipboard right in my chest. You tell him then. I'm not going to tell him to start running ball. So I'm at the timeout, like, all right, we're just going to set a high ball screen between Jay and Thomas. Boom, boom, boom. Jay, if they both defenders go through, hit it back to Robert. Robert not got through. And it happened. Robert hits 2 or 3. Now they got to guard it straight up. Jay just dropped. We end up winning double digits at home, ranked team. We come walking in the coach lab. Coach is sitting on his couch, just all in. He's getting this slumped like mood like this with his bad mood. Chancellor comes in. Coach Myers, our AD, comes in. Great game, guys. They're high-fiving us. You know, I mean, we beat. I mean, the top 10, 15 team. And I mean, coach doesn't budge. I mean, he is pissed. And Gerald's like, Jesus, Bob, what's wrong? You just beat, Missouri, they're ranked 15. Well, we won because of the ball screen. He was mad because we won the game because of the ball screen. He didn't, I mean, that was it. He won it. He was such a purist, but then I'll give him credit. After that, we were able to, but it took me, I mean, think about it, all the years he coached, he did not ever run the ball screen until like his 3rd or 4th year at Tech. It took him that long to actually put it in the offense.
I would have loved to have been on the other bench when they see that ball screen happen. They're like, what the crap? Like that.
Oh, yeah. That's the first team he ever ran a ball. And the best, he had the story. He and Digger Phelps were like brothers. So Digger had to guard, gosh darn it, I forget his name, but he couldn't shoot. He was like McDonald's All-American. They get him, and he couldn't shoot. Only time I got my dad, because of Michigan State, Coach Izzo has 100 out-of-bounds plays that are unbelievable. So when I was doing the scout, I noticed you just 2-3 them. They throw it to half court to the team. So I got Coach, my dad.
He didn't do 2 threes.
No. So I was like, Dad. So he agreed. He's like, okay, they can do 2-3, but once it gets half court, we're in our man. So that's the only time. But I found out later on, he was like, the only time I ever did 2-3 was against Digger. They played Notre Dame. I think it was at home. And I think the kid's name was Rivers. I forget his name, but big time guard, but he just couldn't shoot. My dad played 2-3, and Indiana wins by like 30. Digger wouldn't talk to my dad for like 6 months. He calls my dad up, and I mean, he's chewing out my dad. You embarrassed me. I thought we were friends. You never plays on. My dad's like, Digger, I'm trying to win. Your guy can't shoot. What do you expect me to do? That's the only time he played a whole game in 2-3 zone. And it was against Digger Phelps at Notre Dame. And they ended up winning the game. But that was the only time he ever played 2-3 zone.
One more question, and then we'll do a quick speed round, and I'll let you go. This may be hard for you to answer, and if you can limit it to 3, that'd be great. But what are 3 characteristics of a great coach?
Number 1, loyalty. That's the one thing. My dad, and it's not just you're loyal to your players, you're loyal to your program, your school, and it happens there. goes into everything in life. You know, it's hard to find loyalty. Uh, you need loyal assistants, but that was loyalty's number one. I think you have to have a personality. You have to have a personality. And now it can be like Scott's personality, which gets you energized. It'd be like my dad's personality that gets you energized in a different way, but it's motivation. You know, you got to be able to motivate people. And communication. You got to be able to talk and get your point across. You know, because, you know, everything you think about coaching has to do with communication and motivation. Your players, your alumni, your recruiting, you know, your own assistants. But the one I always took from my dad is loyalty. I mean, I've never seen a more loyal guy to his players. If they did something, you know, we all screw up. I mean, even I got kicked off the team. I mean, he actually told me, he's like, you know, I love you. You're my son. But as a player, I hate you right now. You know, like, I mean, he actually told me. He used to say I was the reason animals ate their young. Well, I had a bad 2 years there, man. I was buck wild. But he was still loyal. I was still one of his guys. But the loyalty, no one talks about. But just seeing him help, I mean, players would call. It didn't matter if it was money, a job, or just, like you said, just need a pat on the back. He's always there for his players, his friends. I mean, it's crazy to say, but even with his Alzheimer's, he didn't know who I was probably the last year and a half, 2 years. Had no idea. But he knew I played for him. And I tell him, you know, Dad, I'm your son. I played for it. But the playing for him hit. And, I mean, it was wild. So I kept an apartment. The pace was great. So I had an apartment for 3 years up in Indianapolis. I'd come every month to spend time with them. You know, they let me handle my schedule and everything. And every time I left the house, because he'd realized I played for him, he'd be like, hey, if you ever need anything, and you need me to make a phone call for you, just let me know. And, you know, the poor guy can't, you know, but that was still in his mindset to help one of his guys. And to me, that loyalty, I mean, and it's hard to find. I mean, how many, you know, you get fired in a situation. Like I always tell guys, I warn them when they get fired in coaching. I was like, all right, you're going to find out who your real friends are. And, you know, and I count on my hand the guys, you know, I was out of it 10 years and guys that would call me all the time when I was coaching, then you don't hear from them. But that's the one thing. And people are like, well, how's loyalty enter into coaching? It does, you know, because you want to be loyal to your school, you know. I mean, my God, my dad was it's kind of neat going through his memorabilia now and stuff. And I find letters from like he ended up retiring as I think a general, but I think it was like a colonel or whatever. Whoever hired the first guy hired him at West Point. These letters, I mean, 20 years later, just a loyalty to my dad, because this guy gave him a bone, hired him as a young guy at West Point. Then I think it was Bill Ulrich, first guy, the first AD at Indiana that hired him. And I come across these letters and just cards and stuff in the last couple of months going through my dad's stuff. And I'm not, you know, 20, 30 years later, just the loyalty, just because that guy helped him and he just always would, sometimes to a fault, but I'd rather have that than not be loyal.
Right. That was going to be kind of my point to that is I agree. I think it's rare, but I don't think as a coach you can afford to quit trying. Like I think you got to accept the fact that, and this is kind of the same in life in general. There's always one person out of the two in the relationship that cares more. Like you know, they rarely care the same, you know, for each other. And as a coach, you have to choose to be okay with being the one that cares more and the one that may get their heart broken.
Dean Smith had a great quote, and I had it. I have it somewhere, and he was like, "You can either choose to open yourself up and get hurt because it's going to happen, or shut yourself off and never be close to anybody." So I'd rather be like Dean Smith, my dad, open yourself up, and not now. And this is how loyal he is. So you know, this is bad. I don't get into this stuff at all, but with politics. So, you know, Coach actually campaigned for Trump the first time around, 2016. Traveled with him and said, So of course everybody's on him. Hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Everybody. I'm not saying I support this or not, but so I asked my dad once. I said, hey, you got people close to you saying you should do it. He's like, I don't care. I gave him my word I'd help.
Wow.
And he actually gave him his word like a year before he even decided to run because there's rumors, and my dad somehow got a hold of him and was like, hey, if you ever to think about running for president, I can really help you in the Midwest. And then like a year later, he called him up, and my dad went on campaign. Of course, people, you know how it is right now with everything. And I asked my dad, and he was like, I don't care. He's like, I gave my guy the word, even though it was a year ago, and people were, and that's just him. And he didn't care about the backlash. If there was, if he gives you his word, I mean, it's gold. He was just a loyal guy, and that's one thing I think people miss. And that's I always said when people would ask me, one thing he taught me is the greatest thing I think is loyalty.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible.
But the speed round, these are
All
quick
right.
questions. A lot of people think they know you, but after this, they're really going to, okay?
Okay. I'm
Favorite
ready.
ice
Hang on.
cream? Okay. You
All
ready?
right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, vanilla.
Greatest
Just
shooter of all time?
wait a minute. So, are we talking about college, NBA? What are we
Say
talking?
all time. Whatever you want.
Great. Um, well, Indiana, Steve Alford.
Hmm.
NBA, Paxson.
Wow.
Yeah,
Coach,
clutch, man.
over 200 episodes. That's the first Paxson that we've ever
Yeah,
had.
no, because I love the bull, and we got history with the Paxons, man. Nah, Paxson, man, that's clutch, man, to win that for the Bulls.
Jordan trusted him. He
Oh yeah,
trusted him.
nah, that's all that needs to be said, man.
That's right.
That was my dad's guy. You know that story, don't you? When the Trailblazers called him during the Olympic trials, and I was there. I'm 13 years old, and his buddy Stu Inman was the general manager. So the draft was during the Olympic trials. They actually went down to Channel 4, WTTV in Bloomington, satellite, when they each got drafted, did the interview because they were going through the Olympic trials. And so Stu Inman calls my dad like 2 days before, and they needed a center. They're going to draft Sam Bowie. And my dad hated anybody from Kentucky. It didn't matter. So, of course, coach goes, you can't draft this guy. You got to draft Michael Jordan. And coach had him on the intercom. He's like, well, Bob, I just told you I need a center. Well, hell, Stu, play Jordan at center. And so when Jordan had that confidence, boom, man. So
I never heard that story. It was always fun hearing the stories about the Olympic team experience that they had together.
Oh, and Jordan was one of the guys he called in. It was like, look, I need to be able to get on you and for this to work. And Jordan actually is the gold medal game, and coach started to come in, and Jordan said, coach, we got it, man. And coach, okay. I mean, he was smart enough. If he says we got it,
if he says it.
And of course, they blew out, Spain. So sorry to screw up the speed round, man.
No, and anytime in the speed round that we go, it's great.
So Alford College, Paxson. But for me, when I was playing Indiana, Pat Graham.
Pat Graham.
He hurt his foot. Mr. Basketball from Floyd Knobs hurt his foot. Stress fracture. By far, though, if he wouldn't have broken his foot, best pure shooter I have ever seen. Okay. But just never because of the injury. So that's Pat Graham, Steve Alford, John Paxson.
Love it. Favorite superhero?
Iron Man. Actually, Didn't cry, but when
When he got killed?
oh my God, man, that
Yeah.
messed me up for a couple of days. It's like losing a friend.
It was a powerful moment. Yeah.
Hey,
Coach,
because I
Coach,
got in my
thank
office at
you.
home, I got actually Iron Man stuff memorabilia. Yeah, yeah. Actually, that messed me up. That was sad, man.
Yeah. Great. Loved those, all the movies. Okay, I've made a mistake of saying one of the best things of COVID, but so I changed the phrasing of that. But one of the things that my family did during COVID is when we were stuck at home, and my son was a eighth grader, maybe ninth grader at that time, and we went chronologically through all those Marvel movies and
I
the
did the sa-
story and the way that it weaves together. It was so much fun to do.
I did the same thing. I Googled it and wanted to see how they went in
Yep.
order. Even though I'd seen them, I wanted to piece it all together. I did the exact same thing, man.
Uh, Top three dinner guests all time or any time period.
I'm not going to include my dad because that's a given. That's too easy. Muhammad Ali,
Hmm.
Red Auerbach, Bill Russell.
Wow. That's a good dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
Best basketball movie of all time.
Hoosiers, man.
I would have been shocked. I would have been shocked if you said something different.
Semi-pro, maybe.
Coach, golly, what's happening right now? So much synergy. Like, one of the most underrated basketball movies out there.
You know one you probably never saw. There was two back in the day. Gabe Kaplan, Fast Break. You remember him? Welcome Back, Carter.
Okay.
He did one called Fast Break, and I think Bernard King was in it. So Steve, I don't know if you can even find it on YouTube. And then
All right.
Dr. J was in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
A parent sent me that DVD to watch a few years ago, and so I've heard of that one before. But semi pro.
And then a book, The Cockroach Basketball League. I think it was Charlie Rosen. I think that's who it was. Phil Jackson's buddy. That was actually his assistant. It's pretty much based on his year in the CBA. And then anybody, like I coached, 2 years in the minor leagues, and guys that played or coached. Yeah, great. And no one's really heard of it. The Cockroach Basketball League.
Okay.
You got to get for a book.
Okay. All right. So I'm in Texas. There's no shot clock in high school. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
No shot clock in Indiana either.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Being the state of I mean,
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on it?
You got to have a shot clock.
Okay.
I think people argue it actually increases the flow of the game, and you actually get better shots because kids don't want to get back. And I was shocked because I hadn't been at high school basketball in 10 years. So I go to AU events, they have a shot clock, and then these high school teams, they started working out, and I'm watching I'm looking around like, there's no shot clock. Oh yeah, coach, we still don't have. I'm like, oh my God.
Wow. Yeah.
I think you got to have it.
Yeah.
Now I don't know.
agree.
I don't think you need to have it at 24, like the NBA, but you gotta have a shot clock.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Halloween. Oh my God, I just ordered when I was at Texas Tech and Lamar, I had a Halloween party for all the coaches, like all the sports and boosters and stuff. But you had to come dressed up.
Wow.
So now we moved to Vegas. I'm in scouting. I can't have the Halloween party because you don't have all those people. So I got rid of all my animatronics. So I swear to God, last night I couldn't sleep. I ordered, these are life size, 6 foot. I ordered Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Beetlejuice, Chucky. Oh, and Leatherface from Texas Charles animatronics. My wife's gonna be so ticked off when those boxes arrive. But yeah, for Halloween, because we're gonna decorate again for Halloween.
So the party's back on, is what you're saying?
We're gonna get it going again. And Vegas was great. We'd actually dress up. I had a good friend of mine and his wife. Actually, I played prep school with him. We ended up moving by each other. I hadn't seen him like 20 years. We dress up every Halloween and go down on Fremont. Everyone's dressed up in Vegas on Halloween, but Halloween's my favorite
Nice.
holiday.
Two more. Actually, three. What book would you give someone?
The Energy Bus.
Nice.
Yep. Yep. Actually, I just
Favorite
read it.
pl-
I just
Sorry,
read
go
it
ahead.
again. Just read it again.
Nice. Favorite place to travel?
I have a house in Panama City Beach. Love it. Love it. Got it when I took over at Tech. Yeah.
Man.
Panama City Beach. Love it down there.
Last one. In basketball, as a player, who is the GOAT?
Who's the
Who's the
Who-
GOAT?
Oh, Michael Jordan, man. But that's the guy. I mean, everyone can argue this and that. Mindset. I mean, ability. I mean, cutthroat. I mean, I've never seen bigger competitor. I mean, so we had this. So we had the Olympic. Coach did the same. Olympic team comes over. My mom used to make great sloppy joes, so she makes sloppy joes. It's not even the final cuts. Barkley was there, all these guys, and we had a championship-sized pool tape. I'm 13 years old, and I'm talking all kinds of crap to Jordan. He whips me so bad, talking crap to me, it makes me cry. I'm a 13-year-old. That's how competitive that guy is, man. He made a 13-year-old cry playing pool. I mean, but it was unbelievable to me. I mean, he's like a big brother, rest of that. But I learned my lesson. I would never talk crap to that guy ever. I mean, it just lit that dude. I mean, it was Olympic practices. I mean, he competed in everything. And it's kind of like all the drills I do now. And my dad started doing it. Everything, I don't care if it's a shooting drill. We play to something. There's got to be a winner
Nice.
or a loser. And we got a lot of that from Jordan. I mean, horse games after those practices, they'd actually do hang time horse. Like jump up in the air and you had to like triple clutch. I mean, but it was brutal. I mean, and then they play tonk on the back of the plane. And it was great because, coach is Mr. Anti-Gambler. So they had me come back there and I'd sit in the middle of them and I'd always have, I'd have a comic book or something. So we hid the money underneath my comic book. So because coach would come back, to check on everybody. He didn't care about cards. He just couldn't gamble. And so Jordan and them were smart enough. Hey, let's have little Patrick back there. And so we hid the money underneath my comic book when coach would come back and talk to everybody and hang out for a little bit and then go back up in front of the plane. And I mean, everything the guy did was he just competed, man. And that's why he was so good. And I don't care. There's nobody, these other guys, don't get me a great guy, great players, but nobody, man, that guy, holy cow. I don't care what anyone says. He's the man.
Coach, this was just incredible, man. To get to have this opportunity to talk hoops with you, but thank you for just being so open and honest and sharing so many awesome stories that I've never heard before. This was just an absolute honor for me.
Well, anytime, man. It's something I get in trouble for being too honest, but I'm old enough now. I don't care. It's just. But I'll tell you about Bliss though. He was the only guy. He really screwed us up because when we got to Tech, we didn't put in the 5-man motion right away. We put in our triangle, the 3-man motion. Bliss was, Bliss being my dad's assistant for a long time. Yeah. He was the first guy to switch all 3 guys because that's the one way you can screw it up. And because of Baylor, we went to our 5-man motion, but it lasted all the way for about 15 games. We're playing in Waco. My dad's like, and I'm like, what? He's like, Bliss is switching it. We got to go to our 5-man. But we lived off our first 15, 16 games we got to Baylor. We lived off the 3-man motion. And then Coach Bliss screwed it all up for us.
Nice. Well, but no, this was so awesome. And yeah, just honored that you'd give up your time. And I really appreciate it, Coach.
No, it's great for me to talk to guys I respect and enjoyed, watching you play, and you're a great competitor, and I wish you the best of luck. And you ever come up this way, man, come see us. And if you can't find anybody again midway through the year, if you want to talk hoops, see how things are going, I'll be on anytime.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.